All right, welcome on this Halloween day, as we are going to be seeing Hello and GGX fight it out in the Clan War Cup. These are going to be all replays. They all kind of got their games in when they could. Unfortunately, two of the games never did get played, but we'll be getting around to the rest of them, and there should be some good fights in that. Hope everyone is enjoying the Halloween day, enjoying in the festivities, and the like. So, without further ado, we might as well be getting right into our first game. It is going to be Dwarves versus Dark Elves, with Logic on the Dowie, and Ninja will be commanding the Dark Elves. Right, we're just going to get loaded on in, and then we'll be underway momentarily. Let's get all of the settings all set. All right, now let's head on in. So for once it does pick up, might need to refresh that game. There we go. So for the Dowie side, going to be led by Logic. We do have Thoric Ironbrow as the Lord, and for his kit, he is going to be bringing in, with that Locus Power, the Master of the Ancient Lore, as well as the Rune of Doom. 24 melee attack can cause fear, and that is a map wide. And then we have the Rune of Speed and the Rune of Slowness, looking for some nice control on the battlefield. For the rest of the forces, we do have Ekron's Miners and a bunch of other miners for that front line. They'll be backed up by some Dwarf Warriors, so the miners can be getting off those initial fires. And then we have some Thunderer line in that back, 4 in total. On the very back line for the Dowie, it is going to be Longbeards, the Dragonback Slayers, and some of the Grumbling Guard, the Longbeards with great weapons, and some more Longbeards on that front. Let's speed up that camera just a bit there. It's a little on the slow side. There we go. Now I'll swing over to the Dark Elves for Ninja, and here we do have Marathi up in the sky, going to be coming on in with a kit of her own. She's going to be on her Dark Pegasus. She has that Greater Arcane Conduit. We have the Enchanting Beauty, we have a Soul Stealer, and the Wand of Caradon to kind of look to get a little bit more extra DPS. And of course, Marathi is always a very strong pick in pretty much every single matchup that the Dark Elves can be having. Otherwise, it is going to be Bleak Swords for that front line, backed up by some Witch Elves and some Black Art Corsairs. Not seeing any Sisters of Slaughter. Normally that is a pick that you're going to be seeing in this matchup, but we do have some Reaper Bolt Throwers and a couple of Scourge Runner Chariots. Now, Scourge Runner Chariots will do quite well. They have a nice 150 range, and that armor piercing on their missile strength will help get through that Dowie, and even some more Reaper Bolt Throwers. So lots of range for the Dark Elves. Can be really trying to pull the Dowie in, and they definitely have the range to do it. So let's get things rolling, as both sides going to be facing off. And initially, yeah, the Reaper Bolt Thrower is going to have plenty of range here to be kind of getting away off their shots against the Dowie, and they're going to be having to get into close range, getting into those Thunderers. But they are that nice heavily armored, so they shouldn't be taking too much damage from those Reaper Bolt Throwers. I think the Dark Elves really expecting to see at least some artillery to trade into it, but without those targets, they are going to have to kind of just take some shots in at the rest of the Dowie forces, and Thoric might be a decent target for him. He is going to be getting the Rune of Slowness, though, onto Marathi, as these Thunderers going to be getting in a nice volley, some very nice, as 3 units seem to be opening up, taking her down to half health so quickly in that fight. And they're going to be getting another volley in from that last unit of Thunderers, getting Marathi very low, and this is almost a critical loss early on in that fight. Marathi gonna want to be getting as far away as possible. She's gonna be getting a Soul Stealer off by looks of things, just to get as much health back as she can at this point, dropping a Wand of Caradon on these Ekron Miners as well. Or it looks like the Soul Stealer may have chosen a different target. And there it goes off, getting a little bit of higher value in, unable to really get both the miners in that cast, but she does need that health back, as she took a massive amount of damage early on. And now the Reaper Bolt Thrower is going to be firing away, getting those shots off in that spread shot. I think they might be doing a little better to get some shots in with just the single, because they're not going to be doing a whole lot of damage to these highly armored miners. They do have 80 armor to top things off, so they're going to be able to resist much of this incoming damage. You just see those volleys just pretty much doing nothing to their HP pool. But now the Scourge Runner is going to be getting in and trying to do a little bit of extra poking damage. I think they definitely need to be kind of pushing forward a little earlier on in this fight, trying to pluck away. But things looking fairly strong for the Dowie, though, with that health back from Marathi. She has been able to get a little bit on that balance power, but she's going to have to be very careful from this point on. Scourge Runner's free to fire at this point, nothing too close to be able to counter back. The Thunderers are getting in, and they are going to be obstructed by these trees here, so they're not going to be able to getting in the best shots, but some shots probably will be able to make their way through as the Scourge Runners just charging right through the miners, trying to bait out some of the blasting charges, I'm sure, but they are taking quite a bit of damage from those Thunderers. Even going through these tree lines are taking off a bit of HP onto them, but the rest of the miners are going to be getting in range, and I think the Dowie going to be having a field day with these blasters, because they don't have anything to really pluck away against these miners. The blasters have taken a bit of damage. The focus fire coming in from all of their rebuilt throwers have been able to at least whittle them down a little bit, and these Scourgers continuing to cycle through, delaying as much as they can. Dark Riders charging forward, but those Bleak Swords taking that blasting charge right to the face, taking a ton of damage as the other ones tries to get prevented by this Dark Rider charge. They are able to wave for these miners and rout them off, but not before they're able to get one volley off, doing a massive amount of damage to these Bleak Swords. And now the heavy armor of the Dowie are going to be making connection with that front line, seeing if the Black Ark Corsair is going to be able to kind of pull things back for them. But my money so far is on the Dowie. Most of their forces have not even made it to the front line, and these Scourge Runners have taken so much damage. Bleak Swords are already starting to rout before they're even able to absorb any charge, and the Corsair is going to have their work cut out for them to really get through all these Dwarf Warriors. And unfortunately, they may have a bonus versus infantry, but they do not have armor piercing. That is going to be sorely missed in this fight. Scourge Runners going to have to make up that work, but they are very low in terms of HP. Still have all of their models, so that is one good thing. And another Soul Stealer seems to be going down onto the Grumbling Guard, going to be getting them as well as these Dwarf Warriors. So that again is going to be healing up Marathi just a bit more and doing a nice bit of damage to them. But Bleak Swords, Black Ark Corsairs just taking so much damage from these miners, and now the Thunderers are in range of these Reaper Bolt Throwers and are going to be able to do a lot of damage, getting that free fire. Miners as well getting backline, which else happen to rampage them, but they are rampaging right into a target they definitely don't want to be getting into melee against, as the rest of the forces just cleaning up that front line. Dark Elves not looking so strong, balance power edging more and more into their favor, and Thor going to be taking a Wand of Koraidon right to the top of that Rune of Doom there, and taking a little bit of damage, but he's just been able to just kind of take through a lot of that damage. And Marathi, while healed up at this point, is losing a lot of her support as we kind of zoom out and see what is all left. I mean, Dark Riders have taken a bunch of damage. They have been able to get into the Thunderers, these Black Ark Corsairs doing a bit of damage, but there is still 3 units free to fire, plenty of ammunition, and just not enough to really shut them down. The Dark Elves just don't have the mobility, especially with all of these Scourge Runners, how low they are in terms of HP. Even these Thunderers will probably be able to weather the storm from any melee attacks. It looks like we have another Soul Stealer getting at least 3 of them off so far, and she definitely needs that healing, taking some more volleys, as it is able to catch 4 units in total with Thoric. Actually, Thoric may have been able to get away from that one, but the rest of these forces taking a bunch of damage from that Soul Stealer. The Reaper Bolt Throwers all using up all their ammunition, but they just are unable to really punch enough damage into these heavily armored Dowie forces. The Longbeards, the Rune of Doom goes off, and that's going to be getting that melee attack and that fear, and especially with some of these units getting kind of low in terms of leadership, like these Bleak Swords and all of these artillery crew here might be feeling that fear a bit, but those miners are getting low enough where they'll be probably routing themselves. And the Dark Riders just trying to get onto the Thunderers, but just the charges, there's just too many overlapping fields of fire. They've been able to get rid of 1 and 2 of the Thunderers, but unfortunately the other 2 are just way too high up. Yesterday, the Hello, that is a kind of a mercenary clan, so it's kind of a mix of people who just kind of wanted to get together, and that is headed by Wicked. So you got people from all clans in that little group there, so it's not an official clan. But getting back to the action, the miners using the last of their volleys, still having one left, using it against those Reaper Bolt Thrower crew, as Thork himself is able to kind of shut them down completely. And I think with that damage being dealt, we are getting another Soul Stealer, but Army Losses is right on the verge of triggering for GGX here in that first fight, and the Dark Elves look to be fallen, and there is Army Losses, and away they go. Logic able to win with his Dowie doing quite well there. Just the Dark Elves, they just didn't have quite enough armor piercing, so we'll take a look at that after battle report here to see kind of how things did on both sides. So we have Thork only getting 800, but the rest of the miners doing very well, clearing out a lot of the chaff infantry for the Dark Elves before they were really able to do a whole lot. And then you just had the high armor that is left for the Dowie, and they were just too much for them to handle. I mean, even these Longbeards with great ones, they just weren't ever in that fight, but just having them left, there just was way too much armor. Thunderers did very well that initial volley. I mean, look at these guys getting over 1,000, 1,600, 1,400, very good value on them. Marathi, unfortunately, just was not able to punch high enough. If you take a look at the rest of it, you can see all those bleak swords taking the brunt of those blinders with blasting charges, and then the rest of them doing all right. These guys did get 876, and the Witch Elves doing okay, but really the Scourge Runners taking a lot of damage early on, and even all of these Reaper Bolt Throwers, one of them got 982, but they used up pretty much all of their ammunition. Just unfortunate for not being able to really punch in with that armor piercing. I think you kind of need at least some of the armor piercing units for the Dark Elves. They have so many. I mean, you have the Sisters of Slaughter, you have all of the crossbow. I mean, getting some of those armor piercing shots from like shades and stuff like that, I think would have been the better choice on there. So let's switch back to that main screen, as we can see the lineup infos for those of us just joining on in. And we'll get the score updated for that first one, as well as Hello goes off to an early lead 1-0. And we can kind of go over the scoring as well for those who may be unfamiliar with the overall scheme of these clan wars. So with the 1v1s, they're all going to be worth 1 point. Once we get into the 2v2s, those are worth 2. And then the 3v3 is going to be worth 3 points in total. So we'll get our next game lined up. It is going to be Chaos versus the Tomb Kings, as we have Lenorm on the Warriors of Chaos for Hello. He is going to be with DBD as well, kind of tuning in on which clans each of the Hello members are going to be from. And then Ludwig will be on the Tomb Kings. And I do believe the sides are going to be switched, so the Tomb Kings are going to be on the left side. Thank you very much, Adelmo, coming in for the Halloween theme. We have to dress up for the occasion. So we'll get into Game 2. And actually, Chaos is going to be on the left side, so we're not going to have to be going around that scorecard. So we still have Hello on the left, Ludwig with GGX will be on the right. So we'll switch that scene on over in just a sec. There we are. So for the Forces of Chaos, it is going to be Archaon, the Ever-Chosen, a very good pick in this matchup. He has everything that you want and then some against the Tomb Kings. He's a Laura Firecaster, getting that Fireball. We have Cascading Fire Cloak, increasing that armor-piercing weapon damage, and then melee defense. And then we have the Burning Head as well. And he has Foe Seeker, Standard Eye, and the Slayer of Kings. So he is going to be able to do exceptionally well. He is just a world beater, Archaon. And then for the rest of his army, he is going to be having those Chaos Marauders in that front line, and is going to be backed up by some Chaos Marauders with great weapons, just to kind of pluck away at some of the higher armor, especially that constructs and the like. Having that armor piercing is rather nice. Chaos Warriors with halberds on the two flanks, a nice armor piercing anti-large, especially considering the Tomb King's strength is in their constructs. Good choice there. A couple of Dragon Ogres as well for more armor piercing and bonus versus large, and then some Marauder Horsemen with throwing axes. So plenty of armor piercing on this field. Unfortunately, yes, no Sigvald in this fight. And then for the Tomb Kings, we are going to be having skeleton horse archers getting a little bit of skirmish, and they will be able to trade well, especially with the opposing skirmish cav being the Marauder horsemen with throwing axes. Those are horse masters. That may have been a different story, but these horse archers will be able to do quite well, kind of just plucking away, especially those chaos marauders with great weapons. That is going to be a nice target for them, kind of pluck away at those shieldless, low armored infantry, be able to get some good value. Otherwise, we have some skeleton warriors for that front line, and a couple of screaming skull catapults as well. Now these guys do have a discourage effect, so they will be having a little bit of a leadership bomb, -8 leadership, so they'll kind of help it kind of routing off some of the approaching forces. We have the chosen of the gods, good armor piercing, good against infantry, against like those chaos warriors with halberds, will be very good target on that side. And Cetra the Imperishable will be leading the charge up on his Kemrian War Sphinx. He does have the Wrath of Patra, kind of keep him out of any sticky situations, Neru's Incantation of Protection, as well as Dijaf's Incantation of Cursed Blades with Unwielding Heal, Restless Dead, and the Cursed. Pretty standard kit for him. And then we'll have a couple of Necropolis Knights with halberds at armor piercing, bonus versus large, and poison. A couple more skeleton spearmen in the back. So both sides going to be having those very strong lords, and those pretty much those dragon ogres and these necropolis knights are going to be kind of exchanging blows. Pretty similar role for both of them. And with that, we are going to be getting underway for our next fight, as both sides going to be advancing. Chaos definitely going to be forced forward here with plenty of range on the Tomb King side. And in general, this is a rather tough matchup for the Tomb King, so we'll see if they're being able to work their way up against the forces of Chaos, as those shots are going to be raining in. Not a whole lot of damage coming in early on, just kind of winging these Chaos Marauders, taking a little bit of damage there. And now the shots from the skeleton horse archers going to be raining in, and right on those Chaos Marauders with great weapons, the target they definitely want to be going up against, getting that as much damage as possible, while the rest of the artillery can hit more of the shielded and armored units. Chaos just going to be weathering the storm. A lot of their high value stuff going to be kind of kept in reserve, not taking those throwing axes up. They just don't want to really be contending against these skeleton horse archers, kind of keeping them in reserve. They know they can't really change well, but maybe a little bit of pressure would be nice, kind of keeping these guys back. But otherwise, Chaos taking quite a bit of damage early on. Marauders going to be on the verge of routing. If one volley from the Screaming Skull Catapults land amongst them, they will probably just rout on that volley. But the Chaos Warriors taking a bit of damage from the Screaming Skulls, but Chaos is closing that gap bit by bit, and they are going to be able to outclass these Skeleton Warriors. They are pretty much just chaff units, so they'll be making connection there, trying to get into that backline. But the rest of the support, these Necropolis Knights, seeing that those Dragon Ogres are a little too far away, can be getting a nice charge in. But the Dragon Ogres, if they are able to get a nice charge in, might be able to kind of turn that engagement their way. But the Necropolis Knights, seeing them coming in, are going to be trying to pull out. We are getting a nice burning head right through the Skeleton Warriors, try and push their way forward, but it is going to continue right down that front line. And it's just going to be clipping the back of these Skeleton Warriors, but a fairly nice catch, a nice heads up as well, kind of pushing in, trying to keep things up. But Archaon engaging with Cetra. He does have, I imagine he had his Slayer of Kings pop. He does have Cascading Fire Cloak at this point, so he is doing a lot of damage to Cetra here, taking another hit just as Cetra is able to pull out, and all of these Dragon Ogres now are going to be engaging with those Necropolis Knights. So two armor-piercing anti-large going to be fighting against one another, and Cetra could be looking for some engagements elsewhere away from Archaon, as the rest of his more expensive units are going to be pulling out away from those Dragon Ogres. But the Dragon Ogres have taken quite a bit of damage themselves, getting down below half health, and the balance power now is still pretty even. Well, these Chaos Warriors with halberds are right next to these Screaming Skull Catapults, and they are going to be going in, trying to shut these down. Actually, it looks like they're going to be pushing back, trying to get these Chosen of the Gods kind of off the field and pushing them back, while these Chaos Marauders in the back are going to be taking care of that artillery. Frontal engagement, once again we have the Darkness Knights coming in. We have another burning head going right through the bulk of the Skeleton Spearmen, doing a ton of damage to them. Might be enough to allow these Chaos Marauders to kind of push their way in, and is just going to continue on down. Might be clipping some more of these Skeleton Warriors, as the mobility for Chaos is going to try and circle around, try and get into the back. And Cetra, seeing the threat of these Chaos Warriors with halberds, is actually able to terror out them off, and now the rest of these Skeleton Horse Archers are going to be trying to just create a buffer around those Chosen of the Gods. And we do have that Ushabti summon coming in over here as well, trying to potentially save these Screaming Skulls. I think that location, though, may have been better served trying to deal with the rest. I mean, the Dragon Ogres are routing off the field here. One of the Necropolis Knights is getting very low, only 2 models left. Can't imagine that thing's going to be lasting long against Archaon, but Archaon really is going to have to pull his weight pretty hard in this late game. Cetra's kind of running amok against the Chaos Marauders. They are able to shut down one of the Screaming Skulls on this side, and it looks like the other Screaming Skull is probably on its way out, if not already on the other. The Ushabti trying to save them, and it does look like they are still around and fighting, though they are getting quite low, and there's quite a bit of pressure coming in, especially Chaos Marauders, as they have been able to circle around now, putting pressure on those Chosen of the Gods. But I think Cetra going to be doing what he did before, kind of getting a nice charge in with these Skeleton Horse Archers, as they're going to be trying to just kind of keep these Chosen of the Gods firing for as long as they can. They have plenty of ammunition left, and they are getting some nice shots in on these Dragon Ogres who have returned, and these Necropolis Knights have taken a bunch of damage. These guys were still sitting pretty healthy, should have had no problem dealing with the remaining 2 Dragon Ogres, but these guys are going to continue crumbling, and I think at this point it was needed to kind of get them into the fight, get as much value as you can, because they are not going to be maintaining that HP pool for very much longer. And Cetra charging in, and the Marauder Horsemen with those throwing axes, they have plenty of ammunition left, so these Skeleton Horse Archers need to put pressure on them, and that fire from the Screaming Skull, though, able to rout these guys off, landing that connection, getting that Discourage or that take cover, and that -8 leadership, able to rout these off, and these 2 Skeleton Horse Archers should have no trouble with escorting them to the edge of the map. And now the question is going to be, is Cetra going to be able to kind of pull things back? Balance power has shifted into Chaos's favor. I mean, Archaon is just so healthy at this point, and there's nothing left that can really deal with him. Cetra is much more of an anti-infantry type of character, and all of those Necropolis Knights are now off the field, and there is still some Dragon Ogres left, and plenty of Chaos Warriors with halberds, so that will be a rather bad engagement for Cetra to try and deal with Archaon sitting inside of very anti-large armor-piercing units. But Cetra is going to make do with what he can. Cetra's Incantation Protection is giving himself that 40% physical resist. Unfortunately, Archaon does do magic damage, so that physical resist isn't going to be doing pretty much anything against Archaon. Is only going to be protecting him against like Chaos Warriors, and that cast is pretty much going to be wasted as Cetra just kind of pulls right on out once again. It looks like to be trying to just deal with everything on the periphery, but Archaon, I think, is just going to be a little too much for Cetra to handle, though the Tomb Kings are doing a very good job of dealing with all of the support that Archaon might end up having, so that is going to be the only way for Cetra to really trade well enough into Archaon, is if he is able to bog down Archaon with everything, all of his chaff that is left, and just try and fight Archaon alone without anything, because if Archaon's allowed to move around, then it's going to be very hard for Cetra to get those cycle charges in and kind of get the attacks off, and Archaon is just hunting down Cetra on his horse. He does have that speed. These Skeleton Horse Archers going to try and peel him off, and is able to slow him down, but Archaon shouldn't have any problem dealing with these guys. It is only going to be buying Cetra a little bit of extra time to try and deal with the rest, but it looks like he's going to take this opportunity and get that charge into Archaon. Unfortunately, that hit is not able to land. He does land that hit there, but a Burning Hand goes right through these Skeleton Horse Archers, doing a lot of damage. Hey, Cyrus, welcome to the stream. And Cetra, again, is just going to be wanting to get a little out of there. He does not want to be taking any hits. He does not have to from Archaon, and he's just going to have to be very patient, whittle things down. But the support that Archaon has left is going to be enough to allow Archaon that flexibility. So at this point, the Skeleton Horse Archers should have enough free reign. It's just going to come down to, Archaon definitely not doing Cetra any favors there with that fireball. But Cetra needs to stay away from Archaon until everything else is gone. But that the speed that Archaon has just, I think, is going to be a little too much. And you see the balance power shifting more and more with the damage that Cetra is taking, and a single hit lands into Cetra. He is still not crumbling just yet, but he is so low on health. He's going to have to be playing this very, very well if he's going to be able to pull this back. But it is still possible. I mean, all of the support now for Archaon is pretty much gone. There is still these Chaos Warriors with halberds, and Cetra going to be getting in one more charge into Archaon, trying to get some damage in. He does land one hit, but all Archaon needs is one hit. He does pop the Slayer Kings, but Cetra gets out of range of his reach, as Archaon tries to push his way through, but all of these horse archers are able to kind of keep him in. And Cetra, though, he is going to be crumbling. He is on just, and down he goes, not able to even get the other charge. And I think with that, I don't think that anything left is going to be able to bring down Archaon. Ushapti using up all their ammunition, try and get in, but it looks like that is going to be army losses. The rest of the units are all crumbling away in a very, very close fight, but the Chaos Forces are going to be taking the victory. So we'll take a look at the after battle report here. So for Archaon, getting almost 3k in total value, doing very, very well. Rest of the forces taking a lot of damage on that initial approach, but there was plenty of units. The Chaos Warriors with halberds not really doing all too well, but just having that high armor was rather helpful. One of the Dragon Ogres did get 1200, and then all of the throwing axes, nothing too great. It was really Archaon's show there, and he definitely did perform quite well. And then on for the Tomb Kings, Cetra, unfortunately, just was pretty much running from Archaon and just could not really do the damage he needed to. Just not a good matchup against Archaon, who is very well suited to deal with Cetra, especially with that magic damage. Makes that incantation of protection pretty much useless, only good for fighting other units other than Archaon there. Rest of the forces, these Necropolis Knights doing very well, 1800, but still not enough to pull things back. So let's get back to that main screen, get that score updated, as Hello is going to be taking the first two fights at going up 2-0. So we'll update that scorecard real quick. All right, and our next game is going to be a 2v2. It is going to be the Undead with the Coast and Tomb Kings against Bretonnia and the Greenskins. So we will have the Black Thorn on the Tomb Kings. We'll have Dr. Kite, who, I take a quick look at the rest of the stats here. So that is going to be Wicked, so that is his name in this fight. So Wicked is going to be showing up with the Coast and against Wenin and Waldsterben for Bretonnia and the Greenskins. So we'll load up this fight. Yes, Cyrus, the 2v2 and the 1v1 that I have X'd out, those two fights were not played, so unfortunately we don't have any replays for those, but we'll be going over all of the other fights that we have, as this is going to be GGX's first opportunity to really close that gap, getting it back up to even if they are able to pull up a win. Otherwise, they are going to be sitting in the danger zone if they are going to be losing this fight out. So just about loaded in, and then we'll switch on over and get things underway for our third match of the day. All right. All right, switch the scene on over. So, for the Undead, going to be led by the forces of Hello, we do have Count Noctilus for the Vampire Coast, and he will be rolling on in with Captain's Wrath's Boondial. We'll have Wraithstorm, Arcane Conduit, as well as Invocation to Heck and Drown Dead. Pretty standard stuff for his kit. The rest of the Vampire Coast forces is going to be Vampire Deckhand mobs mixed in with some pole arms for the chaff, and then they'll have a couple of bombers for some chaff clearing. We'll have some deck gunners with the Shade Wraith gunners, actually 4 units of deck gunners in total, really going for that range, and especially with what the Tomb Kings are having as well, going to be plenty of long range for the Hello force. And we have a Gunnery Wight giving that additional ammunition to whoever may need it. That's going to be anyone from Count Noctilus to the deck gunners, or even this Casket of Souls will all benefit from that more powder. Now for the Tomb Kings, they are going to be having Arkin the Black rolling on in, and he does have the Tomb Blade of Arkan, the Staff of Nagash, as well as the Libra Mortis, Purple Sun, as well as Spirit Leech. So the Purple Sun is probably the only odd thing out with his kit. Definitely not a spell you see too often, but definitely when you're looking to kind of clear out as many units as you can, and we take a look at that unit count, plenty of units on both sides, so that can be rather helpful. And then for the rest of the undead on the Tomb Kings, we have a Tomb Scorpion, we have the Casket of Souls, and then it's going to be Skeleton Warriors for the infantry. Nothing too elite, some Skeleton Spearmen in the back, keeping their long range safe. And then for the mobility, we do have some Skeleton Chariots, some Nehekran Horsemen on both sides for that mobility, and they are quite good units in and of themselves. But that is it for the undead. Now, as for the forces of GGX with Bretonnia and the Greenskins, plenty of units spread very wide across the field. So it looks like Bretonnia is going to be holding this right flank here. Hey, Butcherbird, welcome to the stream. So we have Savage Orcs, we have Orc Boys, we have Peasant Mobs, Men-at-Arms kind of spread out, so plenty of infantry, but most of the mobility is going to be sitting up on the hill here as more of those units are gathered, as we have the Goblin Wolf Rider Archers, and kind of mixed in there we have some Snotling Pump Wagons. Going to be seeing a unit you definitely don't see too often, trying to roll on in with their bonus versus infantry and armor piercing. We have some Force Down Spider Riders for some poison to get into this fight, and then just some more and more infantry. We have an Orc Shaman for the Greenskins getting a little bit of spellcasting. Looks like we just have Brain Bursta as well as Here We Go, giving that plus 40 melee attack on them. And then we have Grom the Paunch for the Greenskins Lord, bringing in his usual kit, as he does have a Language of the Boys. The Great Un is here, and Lucky Banner. And then for the Bretonians, the Fae and her two bodyguards, as we have the Fae Enchantress and Double Paladin, very standard for the Bretonians, and she is going to be sitting amongst the Knights of the Realm for some nice quicker mobility. And the Fae is going to be having Earthblood, as well as Regrowth, Arcane Conduit, Favor of the Fae, and Chalice of Potions. So plenty of units on both sides of the field, and I guess Defenders of the Fleur-de-Lis, some more Knights of the Realm. So just Knights of the Realm for the Bretonian Cavalry. They should be able to handle what the Tomb Kings have for mobility, and we have one Night Goblin way off, and it looks like another one in the back on the far side. So a couple of Night Goblins on there. One does look like it is going to be the 8-Peak Loonies over here, but let's get things rolling, as both sides have quite a distance to close. Nothing super well. I mean, we do have the Casket of Souls, so definitely the Bretonians and the Greenskins going to be forced in on that. They don't have any range. They don't even have any peasant bowmen with arrows that I'm now noticing. Definitely feeling like they should have brought at least a few of those. Having them is just so important with that poison. Even though poison is maybe not as good as it once was, it definitely can provide a nice edge in that little infantry grind. And there's going to be plenty of units to really kind of wear down with these zombie Pyrodecad mobs. But the Casket going to be opening up its shots, getting some nice volleys into these Orc Boys, and I think these Savage Orcs would be a nice target as well, as they have kind of the closest distance. We do have some more cavalry, as we have some Knights Errant on the far flank here, as the rest of the mobility for the undead going to be kind of getting staying close to the rest of their long range, definitely wanting to kind of keep their Shade Wraith Gunners in their support, so they don't want to be taking any fights outside of that long range, as the Count Noctis is taking some nice shots into these Knights Errant, doing very well. He's very good at dealing with cavalry in general. Nice high angle, and those quad shots from that cannon able to really mess up any coming cavalry unit. And these Deck Gunners as well going to be turning to fire at these Knights Realm. A little hole in the formation here. The Tomb Kings definitely going to be wanting to try and fill that, as these Knights of the Realm going to be trying to find any hole that they can, try and get into that cookie jar and shut down as many of the long range forces. And man, those Knights of the Realm though taking so much damage early on, as it looks like we are going to be getting Chalice of Potion probably going down right on top of those Shade Wraith Gunners, as more volleys right into those Savage Orcs, as I was mentioned before. A very good target there, bypassing that physical resist, and Chalice Potion doing a little bit of damage, maybe not as much as we would like. And things going rather well though for the undead up to this point, able to deal with a lot of the oncoming forces. And these two Skeleton Chariots have some nice free reign on that front line, able to really just clean up anything that Casket of Souls was unable to do. But there is a little hole in the formation as the Paladins trying to get on in, as Arkin the Black, I think, is kind of coming up here, trying to maybe drop down a little summon. He does get one in, trying to just get these Grail Knights, as I missed those earlier on. A very expensive cav unit, as more summons come down, trying to pin those guys in, but they are able to deal with one of the Shade Ray, or the deck gunners, as that Paladin, though, took quite a bit of damage from that initial position there, as the rest of the units getting a nice charge in. Earthblood going to be popping off, healing up these two Knights of the Realm as they do jump on top of the Shade Wraith gunners, as another summon just coming down, just bogging down as much as we do get a Purple Sun coming down. Might be doing a bit more friendly fire than they would have liked, as it is able to kind of puck off a few of the Shade Wraith gunners, doing quite a bit of support coming in on all fronts, as everything is just collapsing in on this center rank, as the outskirts as well just kind of be really pushed out pretty much with all these zombie pirate deckhand mobs, keeping things at bay. But that has opened up a bunch of holes into this formation, as the Knights Errant, which what was left of them, are able to get in, shut down those deck gunners, and put a lot of pressure onto the back line of the undead. And things are just really pretty much of a mess right now. We're going to kind of zoom out just a bit to give an overall picture of where things are. We still have some of the skeleton chariots kind of swinging through the side, but that center formation of the undead, which was nice and formed up at the start, is now in complete tatters, as they're just forced being pulled in all directions, and more units with these Force Goblin Spider Riders, as well as the Grail Knights charging on in. These Shader Players are still nice and healthy, but unfortunately just isn't a whole lot of space for them to get some shots in. And the only thing really shooting off now is Count Noctilus, and this Casket of Souls still getting some good shots there, as Arkin the Black kind of circles around. Cacklin getting some more spells in, but the forces of Bretonnia, like all of their cavalry, is getting rather low. The Grail Knights are probably the biggest threat here, and we kind of zoom in as these Paladins are taking a bit of punishment there. Those Snotling Pump Wagons not lasting all too long. Not too surprised seeing them kind of getting shown the back door as they get pushed right off the field. Fey Enchantress draining down the rest of these forces, doing well. I mean, Zion Pirate deckhand mobs with polearms do have the bonus versus large, but the Fae should be able to outlast them no problem whatsoever. The Tomb Scorpion sticking close to Count Noctilus and chasing down the Paladin, probably wanting to return to Noctilus's side at this point, or try and just kind of clean up as much space for the Casket of Souls. But things are kind of all over the place at this point. Balance power is still in the undead's favor, as the Bretonnians and Greenskins are slowly running out of steam. I mean, the cavalry is taking quite a bit of damage. The wall goes off for the Greenskins, getting a nice bit of extra damage going their way with what they do have engaged. Brown the Paunch still sitting very healthy, and he's going to be a nice good tool to deal with the targets like Arkin, the Gunnery White, who might be a good target for him to try and get into. He does have a little avenue. It looks like he is going to be charging right for that Gunnery White. He gets a little hung up on some of the chaff forces there, but he should be getting some nice damage in. Noctilus has some nice range, but he is taking a bit of fire from these Goblin Warfighter archers, though he doesn't really have a whole lot to fear from them. It doesn't have that just surprising, or the full volume of fire that the Bretonnians can bring, so he's pretty safe to kind of take that fire and continue firing away at the cavalry, able to clean things up. Knights Errant sitting very low, and Grom the Punch is kind of stuck right in the middle, unable to really land a whole lot of hits against that Gunnery White. He does have Here We Go giving that plus 40 melee attack up, but unfortunately not a whole lot of connection was made to that Gunnery White, instead turning his attention to that Casket of Souls. But that Tomb Scorpion going to be trying to get in. But unfortunately, Tomb Scorpion only really good against like infantry. It does have that bonus versus infantry over Grom, who is a much larger target. But it is just a mosh pit of all the units, and we are starting to see probably a bit more of the blue banners over the rest of like the Bretonnians and the Greenskins, as the undead really was kind of lasting over the rest of the living forces here. and all of like the important units, I guess, for the undead. Like we have Arkin, who is still very healthy. Definitely, I think the Paladins and Grom really probably needed to focus him down a bit more at this point. He's been just kind of sitting close to the action. And like at this point, Grom would be an excellent time to go for Arkin, but it looks like Arkin is going to be seeing Grom roll right on by, as it looks like the target here is Count Noctilus, trying to get him down, as the Skeleton Chariot's trying to draw his attention. We have some Knights Errant as well, kind of charging in. So Count Noctilus is in a bit of a sticky situation here. He doesn't have any super good support. We have to the Tomb Scorpion here. Arkin the Black seems to be coming on over to try and support, but Count Noctilus is getting dragged down just a little bit, and even the Fae is going to be trying to come in, work her way around, try and get onto it, but Arkin can be trying to hold back the Paladin and Grom the Punch. I don't necessarily think that is the best option for Arkin, as he's going to be pulling out, as seeing that Count Noctilus himself has been able to get out, as he does pop an Invocation of Heck on himself to kind of heal himself up. The Orc Shaman unfortunately has gone down, as the Ushapti summon was able to deal with at least the spell casting for the Greenskins, but they are on the last legs of their own summon, but the undead still ahead in that balance power, and this game has just been a slog throughout all of these units. A very long, drawn out fight as they're just clawing for every inch that they can get. The Casket of Souls is able to get a little bit of distance and is able to fire away, able to shatter these Knights Errant, and these Grail Knights are now very low, very expensive. They have 11 models left, and they do have generally very high base leadership, but they are getting so very low. A single shot, and there it is from Noctilus, is able to rout them off, getting more of that dangerous threats off that field. Those Goblin Wolf Rider archers also getting shattered off the field, but Grom the Punch getting very close to his healing cap. He hasn't taken any high burst damage so far, and it does look like he is able to bring it down. That Casket of Souls, it is crumbling as it gets down to only 100 HP, and I don't think that thing is going to be coming back without a heal from Noctilus. And Grom the Punch now trying to bring down Noctilus, but it seems like there isn't a whole lot that they can do, as the Fae ends up getting routed off, and with how many units that the Tomb Kings have left, losing the Fae is a rather big loss here, because they just don't have the really the capacity to deal with all of this infantry that is left. I mean, Grom the Punch is a very strong force to be reckoned with, but he's not going to be able to take down all of these units, as well as Noctilus and like the Gunnery Wight, for instance. And Arkin is still circling around the field, cackling away. Probably has plenty of Winds of Magic left at this point. I'm thinking that the undead definitely looking very strong here in this late stage of the fight. Tomb Scorpion just hounding Grom the Punch, trying to get some damage in that he can. And I think Grom is pretty much standing alone now at this point. We do have a Paladin, a few units on the very edges of the map, but in terms of infantry support, it is pretty much bare bones at this point for the Greenskins and the Bretonnians. And I just don't see any way back at this point, no matter how lucky Grom is able to get with that lucky banner. I just think Grom is going to be going down, especially with the shots from Count Noctilus. He has been getting some ammunition back from that Gunnery Wight, so he has plenty of ammunition to spare. Should be able to clean up anything that gets anywhere within range. And with that last spinning looms, though, going right through these forces just before they end up getting routed off themselves. Grom tries to make some connections with the Gunnery Wight, but the balance power shifting more and more against the forces of GGX. And though he does land a very nice hit against that Gunnery Wight, the Tomb King forces are forming up around Noctilus in the back here, really keeping that buffer. So keep making sure that Noctilus, and even getting more ammunition back, he's almost up to full ammunition from that Gunnery Wight, and that is pretty much going to be army losses. And Hello is going to be taking the third game, and they will be going up 4-0. So let's take a look at the after battle report, though, and see how things fared on both sides with all of the forces. So Count Noctilus getting 2,500, very nice value there, and the Gunnery Wight, well, not getting a ton of value, definitely provided a lot in terms of that ammunition that he was able to give out. And then the rest of the forces were there. I mean, one of these Zombie Deckhand mobs got 1,400. I was just about to kind of overwrite all of these forces, just like, yeah, just a bunch of chaff units, but one getting 1,400 and another getting 1,000. So a lot of value actually generated from some of those units. Unfortunately, the long-range deck gunners were rather subpar in this fight, though luckily the rest of the forces were able to kind of pick up that slack. And then the Tomb Kings, we have Arkin getting 1,300, and then the rest of the forces, plenty of Chaffias, and that was just really the thing. There was just so many undead. They just drowned the Bretonnians and the Greenskins in bodies as they were just able to outlast their forces. The Skeleton Chariots doing quite well. Tomb Scorpion able to pay for itself. Unfortunately, Cask of Souls not so well, though we did get some nice volleys early on, really helped whittle it down. Like the Savage Orcs were a good target to get off the field. As for the Bretonnians, Faye getting 1,200. Both the Paladin, or one of the Paladins, I should say, did rather well. The other Paladin got taken out of the fight very early on and was not able to contribute to the rest of the brawl. For the cavalry, we have the Defenders of Fleur-de-Lis, and I mean, even the Knights of the Realm. Only the Grail Knights really were able to do any considerable value. As for the Greenskins, Grom did excellent work, getting 3,100, but unfortunately was not enough to pull things back for the forces of GGX. Rest of the forces kind of just going through them real quick. Though some of the mobility, like Force Count Spider Riders, did quite well with that, and unfortunately Snotling Pump Wagons brought for the fun, but unfortunately did not contribute a whole lot there. So, take a swing back to the main screen. We'll update the scorecard in just a sec. All right. So, for that last game, Hello comes up with another win, pushing their lead up to 4-0. And now it is going to be an Empire mirror match. And that fight is going to be between, this is going to be game 4. So that's going to be between, I believe it's Captain Tellus, I believe. Just a couple, yes, Captain Tellus for representing DBD. And then it is going to be Wenin on GGX's side, as they are going to be facing off with an Empire mirror match. Haven't seen too many Empire mirrors, so it'll be interesting to see how this goes. So we'll load on into this next fight, and this is definitely a kind of a do or die situation. Hey, Geese, welcome to the stream. Well, nice to see you around. So we're loading on into our Game 4 matchup. All right, so, you know, I'm going to have to reload that because I didn't see which side was on which. It doesn't say it. All right, we'll load that in one more time. Okay. So we'll be having, Hello is going to still be on the left side, and we'll have GGX on the red side. Just had to double check on that. Thank you, Geese. Well, had to bring out the vampire costume for the Halloween as it is. Definitely in the spirit of things. So we are now loaded on in. Just a quick little update there, and switch the scene over. So, for the forces of Hello, we do have Volkmar the Grim, pretty expected there, as he does have his Jade Griffin. We have the Bound Banishment, Grand Hammer of Sigmar, Grand Shield of Faith, and the Grand Soulfire Bombardment. Pretty standard, but we are also going to be seeing a Light Wizard bringing in the Net of Amntok as well as Fa's Protection, so some nice bit of control there. Also has that Power Stone for a little bit of extra Winds of Magic, and we have a Warrior Priest coming in on foot, providing a little bit of extra support for the infantry with the Hammer of Sigmar, the Soulfire, and the Shield of Faith, so essentially discount Volkmar, getting some more abilities kind of stack and really make these infantry very strong and a fearsome foe, as it is just a bunch of swordsmen. Sigmar's sons for that front line, as they are pushed up right against the hill, looking to try and take that hill as quickly as they can. but they'll be seeing their opposing forces have no interest in even contesting that. But we do have some spearmen, we have some free company militia, some archers just for a little bit of range, and a couple of huntsmen as well for their bonus versus large missile fire, and a couple more spearmen and some halberds in the back with the silver bullets who have that magic damage and armor piercing, a very strong unit to be had on top of that. And then for our vanguard, I did see a unit off into the distance, as we do have one more unit of the Deathjacks, some archers, so they do have that stock and snipe as well, so they're able to get some shots in. And if your opponent is not really paying too much attention to where those arrows are coming from, you can get some nice value in without your enemy even knowing that you're there. As for the forces of GGX, we have Karl Franz going to be leading the Empire against the upstart Volkmar, as we have Gal Maraz as well as the Reichling Runefang, and of course being on his Griffin he does have a Blood Roar as well. That Fear and Terror as well will be quite nice. And then for the mobility, it is going to be a bunch of Outriders and Pistoliers. Definitely more mobility than the other side does have, so they'll have some pretty free reign to do what they wish. And then we have some just spearmen, swordsmen, and some Sigmar sons on the for the front line, and then just a bunch of crossbowmen for the range. But they do have a couple of great cannons, so it's kind of setting up far away from the rest. Aren't even going to bother even contesting the hill. They will have to kind of push up, try and pull these guys down, but with that range advantage they will be able to do quite well. And a Jade Wizard, especially with Karl Franz, Jade Wizard is pretty much a requirement to keep him healed up, as he does have Earthblood and Regrowth. Going to be keeping Karl Franz nice and healthy with those. Hey Steve, hey Hunter Manicus, welcome to the stream. Hope you guys are all going to be enjoying. This is going to be game 5. No, game 4, right? For the series, and Hello is up 4-0. And these Outriders, Pistoliers, and the like are all going to be pushing on forward, looking to really just kind of pluck away. They have some pretty free reign, and they shouldn't have any problem really dodging any of the shots coming in from like any archers. You kind of take a look at that range. I mean, these free company militia don't have a whole lot of range themselves. These Pistoliers and Outriders should be able to get whatever shots they want to get in. And then, so they're just going to kind of cycle around. We do actually have a couple of Empire Knights as well. Missed that as well. But otherwise, yeah, the forces of Hello are going to have to just be pushing on in. That don't really have the luxury to kind of just sit back and relax with those cannons firing away, and already in range, going to be taking some shots into the Sigmar Sons. It is only one option right now for Hello. They are going to have to push in. Otherwise, they're just going to be taking much more damage than they want to, and Volkmar is going to try and probably stay kind of out of that line of sight for as long as he can. He does have that speed to kind of catch up with the rest of his forces. And, oh, my mouse kind of got a little out of position there, but... And at this point, it's going to be just depending on how much damage the Hello forces are going to take, or probably should say Volkmar's forces at this point, kind of keep things a bit more understandable, as we are having that Empire mirror match. But Volkmar just going to have to try and, I mean, just minimize as much damage as you can take. But so far, the Great Cannons really haven't done that much damage. They don't really have that many good targets anyways. Volkmar is probably their best large target that they're going to be able to get some reliable hits on. Otherwise, I mean, all the Pistoliers are just going to try and whittle things down, but neither side, I mean, they just have no cavalry, so there's nothing good to really get shots in there, and it looks like the shots are raining in against Volkmar. Now, with Volkmar, since he does have that regeneration, you just have to either just try and get enough damage in over the course of the fight, and pretty much expect him to get his healing cap, or you need to try and burst him down very quickly. And that's kind of what Karl Franz is really good for. He's going to be able to burst down Volkmar as he's sitting up on top of that hill, but he is in range of those cannons, and those Pistoliers and Outriders are going to be closing in to Volkmar, putting pressure on that backside as well. Some of these Huntsmen and like the Free Company Militia might be good to try and pressure back these Empire Knights, as the infantry fight is going to be getting underway far from the Great Cannons, so the Great Cannons are going to have free reign to pretty much fire away all day long. We do get a net going on top of Karl Franz as the Silver Bullets, Free Company Militia, Huntsmen, all these targets are going to be going in against Karl Franz, and Karl Franz is a long way from his healing, that Jade Wizard, and that is going to be very bad if they get too much damage onto him. Karl Franz needs to get out of range of those high DPS units, so luckily the Empire Knights were able to kind of collapse and pressure back these Silver Bullets. They really had to do that even though there was Halberdiers right there, and Karl Franz gets that regrowth off, so he's going to be getting 22,000 HP back, so it should be hitting him right back up to full. But a little scary situation there, as some of the Empire Knights did take a bit of unnecessary damage. And in this front line, Volkmar is actually taking quite a bit of damage. The crossbowmen, the cannons are all doing a nice bit of work, and now he is pretty far away from the rest of his I guess, well, he's still in range of like all the archers, huntsmen, and the like. So, but Karl Franz definitely needs to kind of circle around back to that front line. But all of these shots raining in against Volkmar. But plenty of buffs on that front line. We have that Grand Hammer of Sigmar, Grand Shield of Faith coming in from Volkmar, trying to just withstand all of that range fire. And now would be probably a very good time for Karl Franz, though he gets another net of Amatox stuck on him as he is unable to support his front line. He has taken an insane amount of damage so far, and he's going to be needing another regrowth if he's even able to survive this engagement. He is just hanging over the heads of these Free Company Militia, the Huntsman, with that bonus versus large. He needs to try and get back to his Jade Wizard and get that healing up, and that is going to be pretty much him at his healing cap very early on in that fight. And that's going to be unfortunate, but the Volkmar is taking much damage, and it looks like we are going to be getting another heal as he pops Galmaraz and the right hand, but he does get that regrowth. Unfortunately, it is not going to be an overcast, probably not enough wounds and magic yet at this point, but Volkmar is getting very, very low, and Karl Franz, all he needs is a single hit. The cannons as well could just finish him off, and here is those Death Jacks in the back, getting on top of those crossbowmen and these great cannons. I missed that early on, and this is exactly what you wanted them for, and they did exactly what they needed to. A shame that I missed that early on, but he gets another net on top of Karl Franz, but unfortunately it is not enough to save a Volkmar, and now Karl Franz just needs to pull back and get some support in. And those Death Jacks, man, I can't imagine the value that they have gotten so far can very easily save the loss of Volkmar from being too critical of a blunder on the Hello side, because losing Volkmar normally would be a pretty bad thing, but being able to take out two cannons and in a crossbowman with just a single unit of those Death Jacks is going to be a major gain. Going to be looking, especially with how much damage they've been able to deal. Karl Franz's battle is not out of reach for Hello just yet, as Karl Franz continues to take more and more shots as they rain on in, but he is going to be chasing down these Free Company Militia, doing all of the free shots. So yeah, Hello is a mercenary clan, so it's a mix of a bunch of different clans here for the clan war, so they got a good variety, people from like DBD and other clans like that who just got together for a bit of fun, so it's not an official clan. Empire Knights in a rather of a bad spot at this point. Spearmen just kind of getting surrounded with that net of Amatok popped on him, and Karl Franz continuing to chase these Free Company Militia. I know he wants to shatter them, but he actually is on his way back. Seeing him fly on in as the Warrior Priest now going to have to be taking on that role of Lord for the Hello forces, getting that Hammer Sigmar Shield of Faith, and we're getting a little nice little Soul Fire coming in against the Sigmar Sons, getting them very low. But they are unbreakable, so they will continue. Actually, no, those are the friendly units of Sigmar Sons, able to push back these swordsmen, pushing into these crossbowmen, as they are going to be able to kind of shut them down before they use the last of their ammunition. One more crossbowman unit over here, but that pressure is coming in from all sides, as they do kind of put pressure on those remaining ranged forces. But it looks like the forces of Hello are going to actually be able to bring the things back. They have enough infantry left. They are losing pretty much all of their range. I don't think there's anything left in the range department that's still online. But they do have a ton of infantry left. They still have the Sigmar Sons, plenty of spearmen. This unit's at full health here. They still have the Jade Wizard and that Warrior Priest, who will be able to kind of at least help deal with Karl Franz, who is at his healing cap, so he's not going to be benefiting too much from anything there. though he does have to be very mindful because a lot of the units that are left for Hello are all anti-large. So just kind of picking and choosing his units. Ananda Amtok is going to be going down, but not before he lands a massive hit against that Light Wizard, and it should be enough to rout it off, and it does, though some shots coming in. I think those would be from his own units, might be doing a bit more friendly fire. Then you actually, no, these are the only unit of range units left, and it is the one unit that Karl Franz does not want to have left, considering they do have that bonus versus large against him, and he's going to once again want to be pull on out and avoid as many of those shots, but he does take a few as they arc his way forward, doing a lot of damage that he cannot afford to take at this point. The Jade Wizard is out of the fight, though most of the healing has pretty much been all done. He does drop on top of those Huntsmen, terrifying them out, and should be able to rout them with a couple hit or two, and then his attention will have to turn to the Warrior Priest here in the late stages of the fight, but the mobility for GGX is pretty much on death's door. We do have some units. The Silver Bullets have returned. They are quite low themselves, but a single volley can do quite well. Jade Wizard is continuing to be chased off by all these spearmen, and Karl Franz is going to be electing to go elsewhere. Just doesn't want to deal with any of the anti-large. At some point he will have to. These crossbowmen using the last of their ammunition, but trying to save the ones with a bit more, just trying to get rid of those spearmen as Karl Franz just kind of circles around, taking some more shots from these huntsmen as he's taking more and more unnecessary damage. But these guys do end up shattering with that terror-causing monster so close, and he's looking to finish off that Light Wizard once and for all as he does catch up and going to be dealing some massive amount, well, no damage there, just kind of pushing that Light Wizard around, but that is going to allow for these Silver Bullets to get some more damage in onto Karl Franz, and he's just unable to really get on the targets that he wants without just attracting the attention of all of this anti-air. And Karl Franz, juking as he may, is going to shatter, and with that, that is going to be army losses. And GGX is going to be falling further behind as Hello does come back with another win, pushing their score up to 5-0. So we can update that score, and then we'll go over the after battle report here. So Karl Franz only able to generate about 1,400 in value. He just took so much damage from all, like those nets were really on point from Captain Tell, so very nice on those spell castings. Really the only, I guess, bad play would have been with Volkmar getting himself pretty much caught out amongst all of the cannons and the rest of the range units, but otherwise rest of the forces on GGX's side, nothing really doing too ridiculously well. I mean, these Empire Knights got 1,100, rather nice there. Crossbowmen getting some decent value in, but unfortunately one of the biggest blunders for GGX here was probably not noticing that those Death Jacks were firing in on the cannons, because they got 1,300 and 700 as it was. Just considering what they would have been able to do had they not been taken out of the fight by the Death Jacks, who got 1,200 in total value, able to take out 2 cannons as well as one of the crossbowmen before Captain Tellus was able to realize that they, or before Wenin was able to realize that they were firing in, and finally pushed them back, but they did so much damage before that. And then the Silver Bullets getting 2,000, the Huntsman getting 1,000, lots of damage. I mean, all of that was pretty much towards Karl Franz, who was able to hit his healing cap very early on in the fight, and then just rest of the forces pretty much chaff infantry, so nothing to be expecting from that. And that is going to be our game. So we'll get into our next fight here. So we'll switch the scene back over. And we'll update the Game 4 results, as Hello has been quite strong up until this point. Our next fight is going to be Lizardmen versus Wood Elves. That is going to be Game 5, and that is, I'm going to have to take a look at the lineup as the names change a bit when the nicknames. So we have a Rubber Duck of War will be on Lizardmen, and we'll have Mr. Duddles on the Wood Elves. So it'll be Rubber Duck's favored faction here on the Lizardmen faction. He knows quite well against the Wood Elves of Mr. Duddles. So we'll load that one on up. So we'll be getting right into the next fight. We still have a few more fights along the way, and as I mentioned before, these two games coming up that I've crossed out that were unable to get played, so we'll just have to push on through past those, but we'll have plenty of fun fights either way. So the lineup, I'll switch the scene over in a sec, but it is going to be a little bit switched around for this one, depending on who sent in the replay. But we do have GGX is going to be on the Wood Elves, so unfortunately it's going to be a little backwards with what the scorecard is going to be representing. But for the army that the Wood Elves have brought, we have Drika for the Lord, and we'll see what she has for her kit. It looks like she does have a couple spells. She has the Pendulum as well as the Pit of Shades for some nice bit of infantry clearing tools, and she does have the Rouse to Wrath for that Dryad summon. And then with Drika does have a few Dryads in that front line, and then on the flanks we have some Eternal Guards and some Glade Guard with Starfire Shafts, and they have flaming attacks and armor piercing, so that'll be quite nice, kind of plucking away at the Lizardmen. Some Glade Riders with spears for some nice quick mobility to just try and put some pressure on a lot of like the skirmish for the Lizardmen. Any chameleon skinks good at chasing them down. And we've got some war dancers to deal with the infantry and more Eternal Guard. But that is it for the Wood Elves. As for the Lisman Forces by Rubber Duck of War, we have some chameleon stalkers going to be kind of up front, but otherwise it is going to be pretty much an infantry rush, as we have a couple of Cold One Spear Riders on the far flank, and then we have just some skink cohorts, cohort of Sotek red crested skinks, some Saurus warriors with shields, and one more chameleon stalker, so 2 of those in total. Otherwise it is very much a wide infantry line, as we have some red crested. Now the red crested skinks are going to be very mindful of all of that archer fire because they don't have really any protection against that. Some horned ones mixed in with some more cold one riders, red crested skinks, and then for the Lord it is going to be to Henowin, riding in with the rest of the horned ones, as he is going to be coming in with Flock of Doom. We have Pan's Impenetrable Pelt, which gives physical resist and melee defense, and then we also have the Curse of Anraher, minus 24 melee attack, minus 25 speed, and minus 24 melee defense. Not even going to be bothering with any of the other spells from Lore of Beast, as we have then Stand Your Ground, Arcane Conduit, and of course Wild Heart with that Focus Instinct. So not quite the cold-blooded as the rest of the units, but still be able to stop the rampage. But that is going to be it for the Lizardmen, as they are going to be charging headlong into the jaws of the Wood Elf. And we're going to be seeing if they're going to be able to close that distance and really get onto these Starfire Shafts quickly enough, because these Glade Riders, though, they are going to be very mindful of the cavalry on the Horned Ones only taking fights within range of their Glade Guard, because they're not going to be able to win those fights against those Cold One Spear Riders at all. But a nice volley early on into the Dryas. Now this loose formation, though, is definitely going to be of benefit to them. If that volley had gone off on like the Eternal Guard or even like the Glade Guard with Starfire Shafts, that's going to be doing a lot more damage. But they are in range now, going to be taking a bunch of fire from the archers, as they're going to be charging forward, trying to get another volley in, as they do take 50% of the health off these Dryads very early on with all of their ammunition, and now they're going to be charging right on into melee by the looks of things. Dryad's going to be kind of catching out these cohort of Sotek, really pushing out very quickly. Glade Guard getting a little caught out by these skin cohorts, but really trying to put some pressure on, and I think just trying to zone out the cavalry of the Lizardmen, but definitely putting a bunch of distance. But that is again going to open up some holes right into the center ranks of the Wood Elves, as the Saurus warriors are charging headlong. There are some units in reserve to kind of peel away, but the cavalry now swooping in on the other far flank. There's just not a whole lot of units. We have some War Dancers going to be turning their attention that way, as both of the Glade Guard also just trying to get some damage in. The Curse of Anraher, though, getting 24 melee attack speed and melee defense reducing, going to be allowing the Lizardmen infantry to really do well against like the Dryads and Eternal Guards, and they are quickly finding their way into the back line, as those Glade Guards are going to be under quite a bit of duress, as the rest of the forces here, though, doing quite well for the Lizardmen, or for the Wood Elves, as they're able to really pluck away at the corners. But these guys are unbreakable, so it'll take a lot longer to really finish them off and start getting that support back up north where they need it, because the Lizardmen are just swarming the Wood Elf formation. We do get a Pit of Shades, though, going right on top of these Cold One Spear Riders, doing a nice bit of damage to them, and these Red-Crested Skinks as well, going to be taking enough damage to get them off the field, and just kind of one more thing that the Wood Elves don't have to worry about, and the Cold One Spear Riders as well, getting kind of plucked away. So the Wood Elves holding well enough for right now, but these Horned Ones doing a nice bit of damage to these Glade Riders, and these War Dancers just trying to hold things back, waiting for the Southern forces to really just kind of finish off what they need to and come back to support, because there's a lot of units here that need to be helping up in that northern field, as they're just getting some shots in on these Cold Riders right now, but the real threat here is in this top. But the Wood Elves, you can see they've actually done rather well. I mean, the Chameleon Stalkers, the Red-Crested Skinks, all these units got peeled off. I really thought the Wood Elves' position was in kind of dire straits, and the balance power is in their favor, as they're able to really kind of just weather that storm far better than I expected them to. Draika doing well enough, just kind of giving a little bit of an anchor. Those Blade Singers, actually that's, I thought those were War Dancers at first. Those are Blade Singers mixed into it, so that's going to be giving a little bit more of that killing power to the Wood Elves in that area. I think there's at least some War Dancers, so yeah, War Dancers and Blade Singers mixed in. But yeah, those Blade Singers definitely going to be a little bit cut above those War Dancers, and are able to really weather that storm. Doing quite well. The Chameleon Stalkers already used up all their ammunition, and they aren't going to be able to really contend against the Blade Singers all too well. Though Flock of Doom is going to be hitting them, doing a bit of extra damage, but yeah, I just don't think the Chameleon Stalkers going to be lasting too long. Source Warriors will be next on the block, but Tehenowin is engaging here with Draika and doing some nice bit of damage, as the shots now coming in from those Southern forces are, as they are able to kind of get into range, plucking away at these Saurus Warriors who have their backs turned to them. Now that the Blade Singers have dealt with both the Chameleon Stalkers, should be able to turn their attention to those Source Warriors, but it looks like those Trunk Guard doing well enough in that department. Now Draika chasing after Tehenowin, though Tehenowin probably could turn and fight, though he does want a bit more of his own support here to try and just contend that fight, but he is very low in that department. Even these Horned Ones taking quite a bit of damage, just they can't get on all the targets that they need to at the same time. And there's still plenty of units back in the wings here. Glade Riders and those War Dancers definitely could be used to kind of peel off these skink cohorts on that front, but I think the Wood Elves are going to be doing just fine without them. There's plenty of infantry left, and there's just not enough support for the Lizardmen, and it looks like we're going to be seeing GGX getting on the board here in the late stage of this fight. And as the rest of the cavalry just slowly getting dragged down. Was a little worried for the Wood Elves here, but it looks like they are able to pull on forward and take that win for GGX. So let's take a look at the after battle report, and we'll update the scorecard as well, as GGX does finally make it up on there. So it is now 5-1. So for the forces of the Lizardmen, Tehenowin getting 900. The rest of the Red-Crested Skinks, unfortunately, against Wood Elves, I just don't know if they're necessarily the right choice, because they just are so susceptible to arrow fire, and there's not a whole lot of targets that armor piercing is really going to do well against. I mean, you can see like Treekin or something like that might be a potential help, but I just don't think that armor piercing is necessary for the most part, at least in those numbers. The mobility, unfortunately, just wasn't enough. Horned Ones did get almost 1,000, but still a rather expensive unit to only be getting that. As for the Wood Elves, Draika getting 1,100, and then the rest of the Dryads doing all right themselves. And then we have the War Dancers, one of them getting 850, the other one kind of forgotten for the most part. And then the Blade Singers, this was really the big anchor here, getting 1,500, getting 153 kills to boot on top of that. So that unit in and of itself probably really held that northern line a lot better than I initially expected, and then just allowed the archers to get the damage in, because it was looking rather dicey for them. All of the Glade Riders were very outclassed with the Cold One Riders and Horned Ones, and it was looking like that pressure was going to be getting into the back line, but the Wood Elves were able to stabilize and bring that fight back, and with that, GGX is on the board. So let's switch back to that main screen. And our next fights coming on up is going to be a Beastman mirror, as it is going to be with Papa Palpatine against Sylvan. Otherwise, yep, that is the correct name. No alternative names for this one, but it's a Beastman mirror, two of the most updated faction, or the single updated faction, coming in to head against one another with some new tools. So we'll see how things fare with that as we load on in. As we will have the normal positioning back, as we'll have Papa Palpatine for hello on the left side. So there'll be the green forces, and we'll have Sylvan representing GGX for the red side. Yes, another mirror. And both sides, I mean, these are just completely random. I mean, it's not random, but it's complete blind picks. But once again, yes, we are going to be getting a mirror. Unlike the last two Clan Wars before this, though, it was both Wood Elf mirrors in the last two of them. So let's switch the scene over. I noticed it's getting a little, a few frames might be dropping here, but we'll kind of just push through it. Looks good now. But I mean, worst case, I'll always have to just kind of watch it back later. But for the forces of Hello, we are going to be having Khazrak, the One Eye, leading forward on his chariot, and for his kit, he is going to be bringing Primal Fury, the Dark Mail, as well as Apocalyptic Vision. So, given a nice little bit of extra support for that front line, that damage resistance for himself in melee is rather nice. And then the Brace Shaman of Death coming in with Spirit Leech, and it looks like aspect of the Dread Knight, giving that fear and terror, and does imbue magic damage, but really it is that fear and terror which is so important on that, because it is able to really kind of cause a general mass rout, especially when you're going to be having everything kind of centered with this group, because we have Gore Herds, we have some Ungor Spearman herds with shields on the far flank. We also have the Gorks Man Rippers, the Bestigor herd, ROR, so that's a nice halberd unit, bonus versus large armor piercing, and we are going to be seeing the Jabberslythe as well, as he's going to be essentially a Mortis engine, draining effect, Aura of Madness as well, with that spurting bile blood. Of course, the Aura of Madness only works when the leadership is below 50%, but when you are a fear, terror causing monster like that, that is going to be rather easy to get things down to that point. We have some Chaos Spawn mixed in, and then for the mobility, we have the Grog Hooves of Wolf's Run. So the Centaur's throwing axes, these guys do have regeneration, and then a couple of more Centaurs on that flank. And I believe there is one more unit of the Chaos Warhounds with poison on the other far side for the mobility. As for GGX, we are going to be seeing some Ungor Spearman herd for their front line. Going to be a little bit of a wider formation in general. Some more Centaurs off on this flank, as we have 3 over here. And then we'll be having a Brace Shaman of Wild, unlike seeing a Brace Shaman of Death. And we have Traderkin as well as Brace Scream. So really looking to punish some of that lightly armored infantry, as well as just kind of punishing any large grouped up forces. In the sky is going to be a couple of Feral Manticores for that fear and terror as well. And then for the Lord, it is going to be Torox the Brass Bull, as he comes in with that armor piercing, the fire damage, and he also does have the brass body with the Slaughterer's Call and Blood Greed. So a very strong melee combatant there, and a very fearsome foe, as we have some more Ungor Raiders and the Koroks Man Rippers on their side as well. Be a very good tool, especially with that Jabberslythe, but definitely plenty of tools to deal with it. And then in the far back corner is going to be a couple of Vanguarded units, some Chaos Warhounds on that back front. I don't think there's any in any of the other far corners, but that is going to be it for both sides. So let's get right on in as we charge on forward. With both sides, I figure this is going to be a rather quick fight. Both sides are very much rush factions. It's kind of a do or die with the Beastmen there, and with both sides rushing very quickly. Neither side really brought anything to really kind of kite away. You have some Ungor Raiders, but otherwise nothing to really draw out this fight any longer. It's kind of a little bit of a stare down early on, seeing who's going to be making that first move. And the Gore herd, though, will have the advantage initially against those Ungor Spearman herd. I think definitely going to be one to pull some of that support farther in. Torrox is going to have his work cut out for him. He's going to be probably focusing in that Jabberslythe early on. We do get a Spirit Leech, though, quickly onto Torrox, doing a nice little bit of extra damage, and Kazrak going to be just going right past that front line, charging through those Korok's Man Rippers and getting into those Ungor Raiders. And that might be a nice opportunity, though, for these two Feral Manticores to dive right on into Kazrak, who is very much isolated, and their speed should be able to help get him connected, as it looks like we've aspected the Dread Knight going down onto these Ungor Spearman herd, giving that terror, and it should be just enough to cause, and they do end up terror routing on those Ungor Spearman herd, giving that nice little hole in that formation. Brace Screen goes down onto those Korok's Man Rippers, and the Jabberslythe quickly just pushes right through that front line, getting rid of both of these Ungor Raiders, especially with the help of those Chaos Warhounds with poison. So quickly dealing with the range, though Kazrak is kind of on the back foot, running away from both of these Feral Manticores and Torrox. But the loss of all of the range, and even though these guys have come back, those Warhounds are right on their tail, and things looking a little grim for GGX here early on, as a lot of their support is getting taken out. But we are losing some Centaurs on the Hello side. Korok's Man Rippers, though, are doing as best they can, but a nice little Brace Scream as well, getting some more damage in. But mobility is looking strong for GGX, as they are able to kind of push things back on that far flank as we swing back into the middle ranks, as Kazrak and that Jabberslythe going to be running in tandem, and Torrox with both of his Feral Manticores going to be in hot pursuit, as these nice little charge from the Chaos Warhounds and Poison Will going to be kind of mucking up these Ungor Spearman herd just a bit as they try and get into these Centaurs, as Kazrak just continues to have pretty good mobility range on this fight, as he's just kind of cycling through. Not a whole lot has been able to really kind of lock him in place, and that is one thing that the forces of GGX are lacking a bit in that mass department. I mean, Spearmen trying to get onto these Chaos Warhounds, and if they are forgotten, they might be able to get some damage in, but otherwise the mobility from the Centaurs are probably going to need to be used at some point to get like Kazrak or the Jabberslythe locked down, and that Jabberslythe is just hanging right underneath that Feral Manticore. I think maybe waiting for his second brother to kind of come in and help, but things very spread out here for the most part. Definitely probably taken even a bit longer than I expected, as things are really getting spread out and chasing many different units across the map. These Grog Hooves are just getting plenty of shots in on these Chaos Warhounds with poison. The Centaurs are just not able to quite connect with them to slow them down just enough, as the Warhound's going to be charging, but it is kind of pushing them right towards the second hand of that trap, as they're kind of running out of space here, trying to get in between the rock and the rest of the units, as the Feral Manticores, though, are still unable to really lock them down. And in the back line, the Brace Shaman of Death is able to once again just kind of start cycling through these Ungor Raiders, and I don't think it really has much to fear. Should be able to handle those guys. I mean, those Gore Herds aren't going to be quite enough until those Korok Man Rippers get in. I don't think that Brace Shaman has much to fear, except these two Feral Manticores as well, kind of coming in, zeroing in on his location, going to be wanting to pull right back to the rest of his own forces, as things are probably going to be trying to condense more and more across the field on both sides, looking to probably regroup around Torrox and then around the Jabberslythe and Kazrak, the One Eye, as things just continue to kind of be chased across the field. Though the loss of the Brace Shaman of Death could be a nice little turning point, as right now the forces of Hello are kind of slightly edging in that balance of power, as that Jabberslythe is pretty much still at full health, and I can't remember if it has, I don't think it has regen or not, but well, thanks for joining Wicked. Yeah, looking forward to doing more of this soon, but yeah, always a pleasure to be casting these clan war battles. Good fun there, and take care. So back to the fight, though, as we're kind of just, as Torrox, the Brass Bull, is going to be getting another Spirit Leech down, and he is probably not in such a great position as Kazrak, the One Eye, seeing that Torrox is very much isolating, especially with the support of the Korok's Man Rippers, is going to be taking Torrox down a peg or two, and with that surround, that is going to be it for Torrox. And I think the last maybe glimmer of hope for the GGX forces in this fight is kind of being lost, as what is left is very far away and not quite close enough to really assist, as these two Feral Manticores now finally diving in a little late to the party. Definitely needed to be in a little earlier to try and save Torax, but unfortunately I think this is going to be army losses. Mass rout here, and with that, Hello is going to be pulling forward 6-1, coming into the last set of the day. So take a look at the after battle report. And Kazrak, the One Eye, getting 1,300 in total value, doing quite well. I mean, he just had pretty much free reign in terms of mobility, just cycling in and out of the field, just quickly dealing with like the Ungor Raiders, and then just wasn't really able to get netted down at any point. Bracing of Death also did rather well, 1,500 on his end. Otherwise, rest of the forces, nothing so far to really write home about. And the Grog Hooves of Wolf's Ruin did rather well, able to get some nice damage in, and kind of just slowly kind of pulled away a lot of the Centaurs and just getting a lot of damage in throughout there. And then we have the Jabberslife getting 1,100 and was sitting pretty in terms of HP at the end, and so wasn't able to pretty much drain things throughout the whole fight, but rather nice value on that. And unfortunately, Torax was just kind of kited around for the most part, unable to really get on any of the targets that he wanted. It was really disappointing on that end. And the Brace Shaman of Wild doing all right, but yeah, otherwise just the mobility for the Hello forces did very nicely, and just kind of quickly going through the rest of the units. Nothing really catching my eye. Both of the Feral Manticores unfortunately didn't do all too great either. But with that, that is going to be it for our 1v1s. Now we have a 2v2 and a 3v3 to wrap things up. So it is going to be Dark Elves and Greenskins against Chaos and Lizardmen. And the score is going to be 6-1 at this point. So, game 9, Dark Elves Greenskins versus Chaos Lizardmen. Will have Park Map and Poison Ducky. So Park Map will be commanding the Dark Elves, and Poison Ducky will have the Greenskins. And then it'll be against God Eater on the Warriors of Chaos. And then it will be Verknechtker. Not even going to try and pronounce that anymore. Will be on the Lizardmen in this match. I guess his name was Bloodomine, so one of those two pronunciations. But without further ado, let's get loaded in to this next fight, and we will get into our last 2v2 of the day before the finale 3v3, and that will end up wrapping things up for the day. But still a couple games left, so hang on. It is still possible for GGX to come back and tie it with the 2 games that have not been played, just it being off the picture. So that's 3 total points that were unable to be accounted for, and there is still 5 points left to be claimed. So we'll switch that scene over in just a second as we're loaded on in. And for the Greenskins and Dark Elves, I guess we'll try and go over the Greenskins first. Grom the Punch can be coming in with just Lucky Banner. You usually are going to be seeing a few of his other kits, but just going to be taking the one giving him that melee attack and damage resistance. We have the Giant River Troll Hag for the spellcasting coming in with Spirit Leech as well as Mither. So a nice little additional slow with 60% charge speed and 60% speed reduction. We have some Stone Trolls providing that extra regen support. And then we are going to be having some Black Orcs. So we'll have 3 units of Black Orcs sitting in that center ranks, and then there'll be some Goblins for some chaff on sitting in front of those Black Orcs, and then some Goblin Wolf Rider Archers and Morgrips and Mangy Marauders, the Goblin Wolf Rider ROR, who do have armor piercing on their missile fire, and on the other side is going to be another pair of Forest Goblin Spider Riders and Goblin Wolf Rider Archers, so a little bit of poison coming in from their side. Now for the Dark Elves, we have a couple of Scourge Runner Chariots, some Cold One Dread Knights mixed in with some Dread Spears for the front line, but otherwise some Dark Riders with the Repeater Crossbows, taking a much more on the mobility side for them, some more Cold One Dread Knights, just a couple of infantry units for them. Otherwise, they are going to be looking to range out more than their greenskins counterparts. We have Morathi going to be sitting in with these Black Orcs, getting that nice extra support with some elite units. And Morathi is going to be having the Heartrender and the Dark Sword with Soul Stealer. We also have Enchanting Beauty and the Wand of Kraydon. Pretty standard stuff for her, and with her being on foot, she's just going to be sitting right in these elite units with the Knight Assassin to boot as well, who does have poison at melee and at range. A nice 70 melee attack and 42 melee defense. Rather nice stats there. And he does have the Web of Shadows, which does some nice little additional damage, and Assassin's Trophy to boot on top of that. But that's pretty much going to be it for the Hello Forces. As for GGX, we are going to be seeing a couple of Chameleon Skinks vanguarded forward for the Lizardmen, and then the rest of the Lisman Forces are going to be coming in with the cohort of Sotek, and we are going to be having some mobility with some Feral Cold Ones, some Clever Girls going to be coming in for some quick mobility, essentially the Lizardmen dog unit. We do have some Cold One Spear Riders as well with their armor piercing and bonus versus large. And then for the Lord of the Lizardmen, it is going to be a Slann Mage Priest of Life, looking to be given some of the Chaos Forces probably a bit of that healing with the cold. She has Earthblood. We have Regrowth, and then the Blood Statue of Spite with the Shield the Old Ones and the Bound Banishment. For the rest of the monsters, we have a Bastiladon Arc of Sotek, who has gotten a nice little buff to its ability, so essentially a Mortis Engine without being a Mortis Engine. It does have a rather nice Vortex spell that can do a considerable amount of damage, especially to elite units, so those Black Orcs are going to be hurting pretty good from that Bastiladon. Now for Chaos, it is going to be Chaos Marauders making up the bulk of the infantry for that front line. We are going to have some Chaos Warriors as well, so we'll be having 3 units of those with the Mirror Guard, the Chaos Warriors ROR, running in support for the main bodyguard unit. For Kolek Sun Eater, as he's going to be rolling in with that Monster Hammer with the Lord of Storm and Standard Die. And for spellcasting for Chaos, it is going to be a Chaos Sorcerer of Metal, who is going to be rolling in with Final Transmutation and the Forbidden Rod. So really looking to punish the blobbing, especially with Morathi on the other side. You can be expecting to be seeing some kind of playstyle centered around that, so that Final Transmutation can rack up some considerable value. Chaos Warhounds with poison and Chaos Warhounds mixed in for that fast mobility on the far flank. But that is going to be it for the armies, so let's get things moving, as both sides are going to be advancing up against one another. So initially, the Greenskins going to be using their skirmish forces kind of push forward, but they are going to be uncovering these Chameleon Skinks, and those Chameleon Skinks can be getting a nice volley off into these Goblin Wolf Rider Archers, and going to be kind of pushing them back. But otherwise, the Greenskins Dark Elves going to be looking to try and skirt things out. I did miss a Scarvet earlier on, as he's going to be rolling in. It looks like he has the Potion of Strength as well. They really kind of give him a one-time buff to his strength and his just weapon damage and all of that, but he's going to be taking some shots from these Scourge Runner Chariots, as these Chameleon Skinks are going to try and kind of push them out, but they are a little bit out of support here. Now these Scourge Runners could easily kind of turn their attention, and it looks like they're going to do exactly that and charge right on forward into these Chameleon Skinks, get a few hits in before they do have to pull out, as the Scarvet is a little probably too close for comfort. But otherwise, so far, not a whole lot of damage being dealt or received on the skirmish side, as these Chameleon Skinks and the Force Scouts, Spy Riders, and all that do have a rather hard time to really skirmish them down. So it's kind of two skirmishers that are rather sticky, trying to duke it out against one another. But Chaos is going to be pushing forward with the Lizardmen support, as they're just going to try and put some pressure on the rest of the Dark Elves and the Greenskins, as they're just going to just try and get as much damage in as they can. A nice volley into these Cold One Spirit Riders, doing a nice bit of value from that, as all of the skirmish forces kind of focused their fire, taking down a few of their models. but the Greenskins and the Dark Elves going to continue to just kind of slowly kite back. Now, they don't have all that much room to really work with. We are getting kind of close to the edge of the map already, so they're going to have to stand and fight at some point, but they're just trying to get as much value as they can from the Scourge Runners and those Dark Riders repeater crossbows in particular, while the Greenskins just kind of slow things down with their own skirmish forces as they try and get in as much damage as they can. But from what I've seen so far, they just hasn't been able to really get any considerable value. Grom is going to be cycling his way in, nothing to really threaten him, so he's going to be free to rain in and out as long as he doesn't get caught up kind of as he's doing. He needs to kind of pull back. He doesn't want to be sitting in one spot for any too long as Kolak is charging on forward, but it does look like Grom is going to be escaping that little trap there as Kolak is going to be charging forward, continuing his pursuit, as the rest of the forces, though, going to be kind of responding to that. He does pull right on back with Chaos Warriors, Mirror Guard, all kind of condensing in on these goblins. We'll make quick work of them, but those Black Orcs are going to be another story entirely, as they are going to make quick work of the Chaos Marauders and the Chaos Warriors, considering they are pretty much tooled to deal with that armored infantry and the, even the Mirror Guard. They just don't have that armor piercing to really punch through the high armor of the Black Orcs. Going to be needing one of those final transmutations here coming in. I think it'd be a very nice target here, hitting both of those Black Orcs, or over on this flank where there's plenty of units all just condensed together. Black Orcs, Dread Spears, we have those Stone Trolls, Grom, all these units here are kind of really condensed, but the Kolak Sun Eater just charging right forward. Unfortunately, that hit does not make as much damage as you can, and we get one of those bound managements going in, as well as the Bastiladon using his own little vortex there, going to be whittling down those Black Orcs bit by bit, and that banishment doing probably not as much damage as it would like. But that Shield of the Old Ones is going down on these center ranks, just trying to heal things up. And we are going to be getting an Earthblood as well, going to be popping off, giving all of those Chaos Warriors a little bit of extra HP, and those Stone Trolls, despite pretty much still being at full health, Kolak just giving them enough of them is just causing them the terror route, and it is going to be causing a little break in that formation as they do kind of push them on back, as Grom has had the time to kind of circle around and is now going to be supporting this frontal engagement. And it looks like we have a the Soul Stealer, as well as that final transmutation. That final transmutation is overcasted, which is going to be doing quite a bit of damage, as I do believe it might not quite have been able to hit these Black Orcs here, but it did quite a bit of damage to the other ones, as well as just kind of the rest of the units in that area. Though the Slann Mage Priest has taken a bit of damage, might be well worth using a regrowth on himself, as the rest of like the Dark Riders and all those units are really getting pressured back, though kind of pushing off these Feral Cold Wind Runners, but they are sitting at the very back corner there, not a whole lot of room left to run. Black Orcs diving in on top of Kolak Sun Eater, as he is going to be taking a bunch of damage from them. Doesn't have the support of his infantry to really turn and fight here, and just going to be trying to pull forward. Definitely needs, probably at this point, Kolak is going to be the key target for that healing, though he definitely don't want that Slann to be going away so quickly with all of that Winds of Magic, and looks like we have a Spirit Leech just trying to finish it off at this point. Even the Slann may have been a slightly better target there, just to try and bring that one down with how low that was getting. It was so close to even just straight up dying. It looks like I think that's going to be a Soul Stealer by the sounds of it, and that is another Soul Stealer popping on the Chaos Warriors, hitting the Slann Mage Priest, and I think it also did hit Kolak as well. So a lot of damage being generated from that Soul Stealer, as the Bastiladon is able to kind of maintain, is dueling it with the Giant Roach Plague, not really doing a whole lot of damage on either side. Looks like we're going to be getting a little bound banishment off in the back here, right into the middle of all these Dark Riders and the Greenskin mobility, but it is getting very low, and as is Kolak Sun Eater. And it looks like we're going to be seeing a regrowth, or just as actually the regrowth still is able to go off and is going to be healing up that Slann, hopefully able to get enough healing back and enough Winds of Magic to also give a heal to Kolak, because Kolak is going to be needed here to really kind of push things back. But that balance of power is just on the knife's edge between that and army losses, as Hello doing quite well, losing that Scarvet as well, and that is pretty much going to be army losses, and the Dark Elves and Greenskins are going to pull forward with another victory. So that is going to give Hello 8 points on the board, and that is going to clinch them the victory as well. Now, all of these games were not played in necessarily the order that we've been showing them today. about next is going to be the 3v3. For the finale, we'll go over the results of this fight here real quick. So for the Dark Elves, Marathi getting 2,600 in total value. Had some very nice soul stealers throughout that fight. The K-Knight Assassin doing rather well, getting almost 1,300 himself. And then the rest of the units, not really expecting a whole lot from the Dread Spears. The Cold One Dread Knights did rather well, get 900 and almost 1,400 on them, keeping the rest of the skirmish alive and well. And they did a rather good job of that, getting 1,100 on one. Other one, not so great. And then 2 Scourge Runners getting respectable values between the two of them. As for the Greenskins, Ground the Punch only got 500, despite the fact that he was alive and kicking throughout most of the fight, unable just to really generate any value, unfortunately. Otherwise, rest of the forces, the Black Orcs, just holding that front line. One did get 1,400, and I mean, that was just the ideal unit to be dealing with Chaos Warriors. It just does so good against them. And then Morgrim's Major Marauders did rather well, and the Stone Trolls even getting almost 1,200 for them. As for the forces of Chaos, Kolek Sun Eater, unfortunately not getting too much. Chaos Sorcerer only saw one final transmutation throughout the course of the fight, and then just the rest of the fight, you can just see all these Chaos Warriors, just even the Mirror Guard, just weren't able to do enough damage, or like any damage to these Black Orcs, and just got taken down a peg or two pretty early on. And then we have the Scarvet, which did alright. Otherwise, rest of the forces, Chameleon Skinks did okay, but otherwise, yeah, just nothing too great. Even that Bastildon only getting 925. But that is going to be it for our 2v2. So we'll switch back to the main screen before we get into our final 3v3 of the day. All right. So now, with the last 2v2 done, update the results on the table. It is now down to the 3v3, as we have Wood Elves, Vampire Counts, and Skaven versus Norska, Coast, and Counts on their end. So the last big fight, and for those participating, we will have Wicked on the Skaven, Geese Howard on the Wood Elves, Poison Ducky on the Vampire Counts, and for GGX, we will have God Eater on Norska, Reaper will be commanding the Vampire Coast, and Ludwig will have the Vampire Counts at his disposal. So it'll be some nice undead for our Halloween finale, and let's get things rolling with that as we load on in and see just how many units are on the field. I imagine it's going to be quite a few, especially with having Counts on both sides, Skaven and Coast. There's going to be a lot of chaff units spread across those 4 factions, so it should be some good fun. Now you can't be cheering for yourself there. All right, so it's almost loaded on in. The thousands and thousands of units going to be generated for this grand finale. Eventually it will load. It's still going to be quicker than if we were going to be doing this live. We are finally loaded in. So just quick little update, and then we'll switch the scene over and we'll get going through all of the armies. So for these forces at work, let's take a quick look at the unit counts. We have almost 3,000 units on the Hello side, and then 2656 on the other side. So there is a ton of units. So let's take a look at what we have for both armies. Let's, I guess, go over the Wood Elves first. So we have some Deep Wood Scouts with Swift Shiver Shards, as they do have that magic damage. For them, we do have a pair of Waystalkers, Going to be coming in with those arrows of Kurnus. Going to be just trying to get some shots off there. Some more Deepwood Scouts with Swiftshare shards. And then in the forest, we have some Glade Riders. We have the Lost Sylvan Knights, the ROR unit. These guys are mighty units indeed. Very expensive too. Kind of banking on the fact that you're not going to be having a whole lot of magic damage on the other side. Some more Glade Riders in that forest for that mobility. And I think for the Wood Elves, that's pretty much it. Other than the Lord, we have a Spell Weaver of High, as she does have Tempest. It looks like we have Apotheosis and Soul Quench for her spells. Apotheosis, Soul Quench, and Tempest coming in with also Arcane Conduit. So really kind of protecting against any of that air units. As we have Isabella von Karstein, though, which is one of the her times to shine is in those team games, as she does have some very nice abilities for that, with specifically the Blood Chalice of Bathory, which is a 2500 hit point, so it is better than a regrowth, and you can use that every 2 minutes, and it has no limit on to that. Also, Raise Dead, Gaze of Nagash, and Invocation. Gaze of Nagash being rather nice, being up on her Hellsteed. I think for the Wood Elves, I think that was it for all of that, so we'll just continue on with the counts. They'll be taking the front line with all of the zombies spread throughout. They will have some skeleton warriors for some additional chaff units with some spearmen on top of that. For some mass, they do have some crypt horrors thrown into it, as well as a pair of Vargals. These guys are some nice regenerating characters. Very nice when you're just kind of condensing everything together. As for the rest of the undead, we just have a couple of Felbats up in the sky, and I think that pretty much wraps things up for them. As for the Skaven, it is going to be some Skaven Slave Spears, but it is going to be Poison Wind Globadiers for that front line, backed up by some additional Poison Wind Mortars, a couple units of those. So really looking to deal with as much chaff as possible, as quickly as possible across the board, and some Nandy Boo Boo Sharpshooters for that nice additional damage. And then for the hero, we have a Plague Priest up on the Plague Furnace, so it is going to be a Mortis Engine charging forward with that Scrying Stone. We have Pestilent Birth, as well as Vermintide and the Pestilent Breath with the Plague Rash on that. So he is going to be wanting to keep it a little bit safe from some of the range units, but is going to be really playing into just the overall drain of the infantry. And with Isabella von Karstein, the Plague Priest doesn't have to worry too much about that HP, but it does have to be at least semi-mindful. And Deathmaster Snickage coming in with Concealment Bombs and the Deathmaster Sigil. And I think that pretty much is going to be the army for the Hello side. Now let's swing on over to what we have for GGX. Let's start with, on the very far corner, we have a couple of Felbats pointing their noses into the corners, just kind of checking for any sneaky Vanguard deployments. But for the rest of the forces, we have some zombies from the Vampire Counts going to be sitting around a pair of or 3 Carronades, and they will have some more zombie pirate gunnery mobs in support, as well as we have the zombie pirate deckhand mob for an additional just kind of chaff to kind of keep around those Carronades. In the forest here, we do have the Vampire Fleet Captain, the Polearms of Deep, actually. We're going to be seeing the Deep being cast as all guns are on board. So we have all hands ahoy, 16 leadership, base weapon damage, and armor piercing weapon damage. And then we have a Von Horseman's Speculum, which is around self, which does reduce the base weapon damage, melee attack, and melee defense. We have Tide Call, and that is it for the spell. We have the Hunger and Kiss of the Deep, but really it is just going to be bringing Tide Call again, just kind of clear out some infantry. Now, I'd be surprised if I didn't see any other spell casting from them, but so far I do not see any casters. For the Norskin caster, it is a Shaman Sorcerer of Fire with Fireball, Burning Head, and Flaming Sword of Ruin, giving that magic damage and magical and fire damage. So that's going to be very helpful against those Lost Sylvan Knights, getting that on the target that they need. Even against like Carronades, they'll be able to really rip through that physical resist. Rest of the units, even more mortars on the top of the hill here, looking to just kind of lob some more shots. So plenty of artillery from the Vampire Coast, some more gun units, and some more zombies just kind of mixed in. Some marauders, and then in the forest is where a lot of the infantry is going to be held, as you have some more marauders, we have some berserkers, we have a couple of sirens from the Vampire Coast, and then for the cavalry we have blood knights from the Vampire Counts, 3 units of of those, with Heinrich Kemmler going to be sitting in the force, providing that support to the mobile game, as he does have the Lord of Venice. So he has Krell, we have Undeath Resurgent, and we have Raised Dead. We have Van Hell's Dance Macabre and Invocation of a Heck, as well as the Chaos Tombblade, which is where he's going to be getting that passive healing to all of those mobile forces. And then even more units on top of that is going to be the Skin Wolves. And these guys will also benefit from Heinrich's Tombblade, so it will give them some nice little additional healing. And Wulfric the Wanderer is going to be the Lord for the Norskin forces, as he does roll in with Hunter of Champions, Fight or Die, and Sea Fang. And I think that should pretty much wrap things up for both sides. So let's get things moving, as both sides have a long way to go to really push forward. And these are actually the Fellbats from the Vampire Coast, and a couple more Fellbats from the Counts on that side, as things going to be long range to be moving up. But the forces of Hello definitely going to be forced into the position of the coast, and or I guess from GGX's forces, because with all those carronades and those mortars are going to be able to outrange. But all of these poison wind mortars, I didn't see any Spirit Leech, so that's going to be one of those things that maybe they would have liked to have brought, just to be able to help deal with those mortars, because they are going to have, for the most part, fairly free reign. The carronade's definitely going to be wanting to focus them down first, get them off the field if they can, because they are going to run havoc, especially against like some more of these elite units, like these Sternsmen would be a key target for those poison wind mortars. Just plenty of infantry though to just whittle down. Any of those berserkers would be a nice target, and of course those two sirens, any of those elite cavalry units, definitely going to be some nice targets for these poison wind crews. But we have the Arrows of Kernus going off early on, trying to take out some of these carronades. Unfortunately, all three of those shots did end up landing just a bit short. It's one of those things with those Arrows of Kernus. You can never really know just how accurate those are, and I think that was only one of them. There might be another one on its way, unless I've missed that one already. But all of the carronades sitting nice and well. And here is that second Arrows of Kernus going to be arcing its way forward, and it is able to take out one of the artillery pieces. Rather nice with how clumped up they are. It very well could have taken out more than just that one, but at least a little nice work from those arrows, taking them down, at least reducing the incoming fire a bit. But those cannons doing some nice work against these poison wind globadiers. I think as soon as they see these mortars, those attention is going to be turned towards them. And Isabella von Karstein has the Gaze of Nagash as well, going to be firing away, looking to arc its way in, and it does take out another of those artillery units. So some nice bit of Winds of Magic being used from her with that nice elevated position, able to take out a couple of their artillery pieces. But there is still plenty left to be on the field. There is still 8 cannons still firing, and there is not quite that much arrows and Winds of Magic left, I think, to take out all of them. So they are going to still have to kind of push forward, and that's not even considering all of the mortars that are still on that back front. But I mean, at least getting rid of the carronades is going to help with these poison wind mortars. I'm just allowing them to kind of at least survive a bit better, because they are going to take some considerable damage if all of those cannons do end up on focusing in on them. And at this point, the movement of these, like the Deep Wood Scouts, can be trying to get in range of these carronades, and definitely going to be getting close enough without being able to, and there's nothing to really push them back, so they're going to be able to quickly deal with this carronade unit. The zombies need to either start pushing up, these Fellbats need to kind of come in and just try and get off, and very well played there though, dropping off of the artillery piece unless they lost it. So they still have those 2 units of artillery pieces, but good heads up play, getting that carronade dropped so they aren't able to lose any more of those units. And that Arrows of Kernus was targeting them, and unfortunately for the forces of Hello, they did pull off that unit, but they are crumbling, and actually at this point would be very nice to get a nice little heal off onto these carronades. But unfortunately Heinrich Kemmler is the only one who is able to do that, and he's going to need to be able to get over quickly if he's going to be able to salvage that carronade unit. Now the mortars are going to be firing away, and the rest of the chaff just kind of getting a little bit of separation between them and the rest of the carronades. And it looks like the carronades have been able to at least stabilize themselves, and do have enough artillery crews left to fire both of their remaining artillery pieces. But very good play kind of pushing up with these zombies, just trying to get all of that in. Shots just trying to keep those fell bats at bay, and one by one these zombies in the front line are going to be slowly getting removed. And if you take a little look into the back, we do have a couple more fell bats diving into that back line. I'm not really sure what they're going to be aiming to really do at this point. Anything that gets try and get shut down, they don't really have the capacity, and it looks like we're going to be getting a Tempest as well, hitting both of these with their own fellbats, and support is going to quickly deal with them, though there's probably be a little bit of friendly fire from that Tempest. And the rest of the units though pushing forward bit by bit. Zombies pushing in with these Deepwood Scouts, trying to finish off this Carronade, and it looks like they are going to be able to do that. Down to just one unit left. Another unit drops on this Carronade. So the artillery is slowly getting taken apart piece by piece, though we still have up on the hill triple mortar, which are going to start raining down fire upon the enemy very shortly. I think things are going a lot better for the Hello forces, just a bit more organized at this point, as a lot of the potential damage coming in from the artillery is getting taken out. Now this one is completely gone. It is only the artillery pieces left, and even that Shaman Sorcerer has taken a bit of incoming fire. I can't remember, don't know if that was from Overcast or if that was from those Natty Boo Boos sharpshooters coming in and doing a nice bit of damage. But here come the heavy hitters on the far flank, triple Blood Knights. Now they do have to be rather mindful because they do have plenty of long-range poison wind coming in, so they don't want to be grouping up all of those units at the same time, so that's just going to be more and more problems. And you do see those mortars starting to arc their shots in, looking to try and clip these Blood Knights. It looks like they did miss them. I did hit some of the fell bats, going to be probably finishing them off once and for all. And these Blood Knights do take a shot, going to be taking a bit more extra damage from that. And there's still plenty of units up in reserve on the hillside, and the mortars though just going to be continuing to rain in as the rest of the forces try and find their way through, as the Lost Sylvan Knights, who have magic damage themselves, but man, those Sirens just on that charge take a ton of damage, and I think a lot of that was from these Deepwood Scouts as well, as these Sirens are going to be taking a ton of quick damage, even though they are able to dish it back to those Lost Sylvan Knights. It's just not quickly enough, as they're going to be pulling it back and probably allowing the rest of the mobility to kind of deal with the remaining Sirens, as the rest of the fight is going underway, trying to put some pressure into the back line. But we have the mass from the Crypt Horrors coming in to counter that, as the Blood Knights try and circle around trying to find another target. But in the meantime, these Poison Wind mortars are going to continue to rain in, landing shots amongst both of these Blood Knights and generating a bunch of value in the meantime. These Poison Wind Globadiers have been pushed back, and these Poison Wind mortars have taken a bit of damage, but the rest of the teams are all very much online. Natty Boo Boos, Poison Wind, all of that stuff, as the pressure trying to get pushed in, but the GGX forces need to be a little mindful because they can't push in too heavily on one point, which is really what they're kind of doing here. Everything is grouped up, and that is just going to be a field day for these Poison Wind mortars. They're going to be landing in shots amongst many units. I mean, there's like over there's maybe 10 different infantry units here, and each one can probably be hit with a single volley of those Poison Wind mortars, depending on the spread, and that is going to be a rather unfortunate damage being dealt their way, as those Poison Wind mortars though are really focusing on these Blood Knights, really doing a bunch of damage. These Blood Knights really just haven't gotten into anything that they really want to be. I'm getting some Crypt Horrors kind of screening them out. We have 3 units Crypt Horrors, though they've really taken quite a bit of damage from these Blood Knights. But with all of these units, it might be enough to really eliminate one of them. The other Blood Knights kind of coming in for that charge, but the very expensive elite cav from the Vampire Counts is taking quite a bit of damage so far, and that's pretty much all been from those Poison Wind. The rest of the Fellbats just kind of sitting up in the air, and I think, but no pressure really being put on the mortars, and at this point those mortars probably aren't really too much of a concern. There's just so many other units on the field, and the mortars dropping some shots into these Poison Wind Globadiers, but unfortunately just not able to really do a whole lot. As the front, we do have some of the Blood Knights here trying to finish off these Lost Sylvan Knights, but it looks like they themselves are going to be going down. Well, the Sylvan Knights themselves are getting rather low. They are just kind of surrounding that Vampire Fleet Captain, and that Vargolf should have no problem in dealing with that, even though it does have the, I think it is the pole arm, even though it has that anti-large, it's just not much of a melee combatant, and just all of these Poison Winds, I think, really and that has been the story so far, has been just the mass clearing potential of those mortars and just really not being able to get them shut down. And it does look like Hello is well on their way to finishing this up as they push back the Skin Wolves, and the rest of the units kind of just really not able to punch through into that cookie jar. At this point, it's almost far too late for them to even get in. And I just kind of zoom across the map, kind of seeing what all is left as Krell has been summoned on the field. Looks like he's actually on his last legs of his summon as he's charging forward, just trying to get as much damage in as he can. He is able to get on to these Poison Globadiers, but the Plague Priest at least has been able to avoid Krell for the most part, as he's been kind of getting bogged down by these Crypt Horrors. Though he is probably able to dish out some nice damage to them. That's not the target that he wanted to be in against. And I think with this, you can see that balance power shifting more and more against GGX, and I think it is getting very close to army losses. Despite the amount of units left, there's just so much in the center with Heinrich Himmler. There's no escaping this mob here. Is Isabella, both the Vargulfs, the Plague Priest, all of these Crypt Horrors, and down he goes, and with him gone, I think that might be just enough to push army losses, and there it goes. Army losses are triggered. Hello wins the final 3v3, and with that, we have reached the end. So we'll update the scorecard and go over the final results as the 3v3 has concluded. So take a look at the after battle, update the scorecard as well. Final 3 points going Hello's way, so that will put them up to 11. And for the forces, Deathmaster Snakeage, didn't really even see him around in that fight. Able to get a little bit of value. The Plague Priest as well, but I think the biggest thing is going to be those mortars, and we'll get to them in due time. Rest of the Skaven, as expected, just a bunch of Skaven slaves. The Poison Wind Globadiers doing rather nicely, but the mortars, this is where that value was gained for Hello. That was 2,200 on one. We have 2,800 on the other. Nanny Boob was getting 1,800. So those three units getting insane value. I mean, they were able to get plenty of shots in on like the Blood Knights, just the massive infantry. And that was, I think, one of the big things is GGX got a little too condensed on that one flank, and that was just such a juicy target for those Poison Wind mortars. Rest of the forces, the Wood Elves doing all right. One of the Waystalkers getting 1,265, some nice value on that. The Glade Riders, on the other hand, maybe not as great, but the Deepwood Scouts, Swift Shiver Shards, did rather well, able to really deal with those the Carronades quite well, and then provide some nice damage in, especially against like Skin Wolves and those Sirens. Nice damage dealt. Fortunately, Lost Civil Knights not able to generate even close to their value, and then the Undead, even though Isabella only got 109 value, just the heals from that Blood Chalice would have been incredibly important, just keeping all of the important characters alive for their side, because it does work on Undead and the Living. A little black magic for those, and forbidden magic. Otherwise, nothing really to write home about on the counts. Really was kind of the Skaven's game there. And as for the GGX side, not a whole lot of value able to generate. I mean, Wolfric, the Shaman Sorcerer, they just couldn't really get all too close to the fight. Even though the Marauder Champions, Berserkers, nothing really doing too well on the Norskin side. As for the Undead, the Carronades did get taken out of the fight, and then Mortars were able to generate some decent value, able to continue firing away throughout the course of the battle. And then even the Sirens didn't do all too bad, but all in all. But, I mean, Vampire Fleet Captain Polearms actually did very well, getting 2,100. Kind of just surprised to see that he only had Tide Call, but still able to generate some decent there. And then the Blood Knights, that was another big disappointment on that side. They just weren't able to find a way in. There was just too many chaff units from the other side. I mean, just the sheer number, there's almost 3,000 units to get through before you get to the important stuff that the Skaven had sitting in the center. Otherwise, that is going to be it for the final game. So we'll switch back to the main one, update the final table to reflect the last bit. So lots of fun games there. I mean, the scorecard is a little lopsided, but the games were all very close and were very fun matches with plenty of interesting games to be had. But that is going to be all I have for you today. I do hope you guys enjoyed the Clan War battle. So I know we are now in the semifinals for that. We had our first one, RTK versus ODM, was yesterday, and the next one will be next week. And that is going to be between, it is VM, and it is going to be against one of the XMT teams for that. So it's going to be good fun seeing that one, and then there's going to be the finals after that to see which clan does reign at the top. But yeah, thank you guys all for joining. Had good fun with that, and the internet seemed to hold well enough. A couple drops, but I think overall 95% of the stream was nice and smooth. But again, thank you guys for joining. Have a great Halloween, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.